And so many of them came back really ruined. We all burst into tears. Again, it all happened. She said, Uncle Herman. For all that time, the footsteps have walked past, but today they stopped for him. And that's the bullet hole that killed him.
Oh, wow. We know you as the Medal Man from Antiques Roadshow. People know your face, your voice, but a little bit about you would be a great start.
Oh, well, yeah. Being the Medal Man, known as the Medal Man, to be perfectly honest, I get that shouted at me in the street, is a true honour, because for me, these humble bits of metal on ribbons have been my entire world for all of my life, really. And to be able to share the stories of these people, ordinary people, just like me and you, with this great audience that I get to do it with, whether it be podcasts or books or whatever, television, whatever it might be. For me, that's a real honour, because I've always been in awe of these people who went off and did these incredible things. And they stood up when the country called. And not only did they stand up, but they went. And so many of them didn't come back. And so many of them came back really ruined. And sometimes what we also forget is that it's not just about that soldier, sailor, airman or nurse, but behind them there's a whole family. And for them it's devastation when that letter, when that telegram comes, or when George or whatever his name was comes home and he's lost an eye or a leg. You know, the whole world changes at that point. And sometimes what we do is we forget what this means to everybody in the family. And that's one of the things that's always fascinated me, because these things aren't just medals. For me, they're people. And the people part about this is the most exciting, thrilling, sad, incredible story. And every time I get a medal, it's another story.
It's really interesting to say that, because we see behind medals have a kind of reputation as being, of all the collectibles categories, they are about the stories. Without that, it has far less value perhaps than an alternative collectible might do. And that whether it's the description or whether it's the kind of the story somebody brings in with it, it's so integral to the appeal.
Absolutely. The medals are all exactly the same. Literally, they're all exactly the same. And for the British War Medal from World War I, 6.5 million of them were given out. But what that does is gives you 6.5 million individual stories. And ever since, me and my dad, we used to look up the medal itself and write it in my stock book. Then we would try and find out where the battle was, and we would find it on an atlas. And then we would work out who they were fighting and what the weather was like, and millions of things that you couldn't ever think about from just a medal. But my dad would use it as a tool to teach you. And the day that it really got me was when he said to me, "So why do you think this man joined the army?" And I said, well, I was about 10 at the time. And I said, well, you know, he wanted to be a soldier, of a gun, be a hero. And my dad said, yeah, maybe, but maybe he was hungry and this was the only job he could get. And that was the moment when they stopped being medals and they started being people. And as you say, it is the story. And some of the stories that come with these things are unbelievable. And sometimes you are the first person to genuinely know what happened to that man. I bought a memorial plaque. So in the First World War, they gave out these bronze memorial plaques. They're about so big, and each one is individually named. Now, it's unusual because it's got just your name on it. There's no regiment, no number, nothing. It's just your name. Because they said at the end of the war, everyone is equal in death. So there are no more ranks, there's nothing. So the plaques just have their name on. So I found this plaque in an antique market in Stratford-upon-Avon about 2 weeks ago. And it was just sitting there. It lost its box. It's just on its own. But I looked up the name. And it was a unique name. So his name was William Scott. Now, there's probably thousands, bless them, who got killed called William Scott, but not William Percival. There's only one William Percival. Now, how that plaque got to be there, who knows, but it was. And it suddenly seemed to me that I'd gone to Stratford-upon-Avon to do a show. So why would I come out of my little hotel room and that's the very first thing I see? He was trying to find me. So I bought this thing and I went away, and for the day that he died on, I looked up the war diary. So each battalion, First, Second World War, they wrote a diary every day of what happened. And normally, bless them, it says 600 went over the top at 7:30, 400 other ranks are missing, killed, wounded, right? But this one, no. This one, they went on, there were 12 of them, and they went on a trench raid to the German lines. 4 of them got wounded, 11 of them came back, and 1 was missing, and that was him. So just for once, I thought, well, do you know what? At least I found him, because he's still an unknown soldier. He's commemorated on a memorial. There's no grave for him. He genuinely just disappeared. But now, at least, I know what happened to him, and I can retell his story.
And that makes it sound really interesting to find the backstory behind these things. And I imagine it's easier now than when you first started looking with your dad. But it must still be incredibly difficult sometimes to actually trace it back and find the truth behind it.
When we started, we're talking late 60s and the 70s. There's no internet. There's none of that stuff. So what you had to rely upon was not the story of the man, but the story of the battalion. Mm-hmm. And very rarely would you ever get the name of a private soldier in a regimental history. So when we first started, we were really working on what we had on the medal. So we knew initials and a surname. We knew which regiment, and we knew they were the First World War. But that really was about it. So you could start to think about where the Berkshire Regiment was, or whatever it might have been in 1916 or whatever. But it didn't start to come together until I found out that there was an organisation called the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. And what you could do then, no internet, but you had to write them a letter. And you wrote them a letter, you had to pay a nominal fee, and then they would send back the details of that man who was killed.
Right.
So the real trick to it was to buy medals where there was that opportunity. So a memorial plaque or something along those lines. So your focus really was on those who were killed.
Because they so often come without a name, and that makes it impossible.
But because they were killed, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission still look after them. And there's lists of them and stuff like that. So when I first started, they really were the only people you could go away and look up. But once you got that, because they told you the battalion and the day he was killed, then you could go back to the history and at least find out what was happening on the day. As time went on, obviously the internet arrives. And when the internet first arrived, it really wasn't very good, because there really wasn't much on there more than you could ordinarily find in books and stuff like that. But what started to happen is that the records that were held by the National Archives at Kew Gardens for the First World War soldiers, they started to be released. And when I first started doing it, there's a thing called a medal index card.
Right, okay.
It's one of these. Okay?
Yep.
You can print them now. It's really simple. But when I started with this, they were on a microfilm. So me and my dad used to go to the Kew Gardens reading rooms. And what I did is I made a pro forma that looked like that and printed them. And then me and my dad would sit there and fill all this in pencil so that we could take them home and keep the card with the medal. There's a lot about these cards which is incredibly interesting. This one's all in blue. You do get, there's lots, the colours mean something. So again, there were a lot of layers that people didn't understand at the time. And as time's gone on, I can print that off within 2 seconds nowadays. But as the internet has become more normal for people, one of the things that it has done, it has completely changed the concept of genealogy. So you now have things like Find My Past and Ancestry and things like that, where you can just type stuff in and you can start to build your own family tree. And because so many families have got a military theme at some point in the past, a very large part of what Ancestry and Find My Past do now is put all of those bits of stuff on there that I would have always wanted. And now I can access them. One of the problems that we've got with the First World War is that the service papers, so that's the actual key to all of this, because to find a man on a battlefield, you need a battalion, you need a battery, you need that detail. And sometimes they're not on these things because they're just things that people use to engrave medals, and hasn't got a battalion on it, so you don't need it. As simple as that. So the service papers is the only place. But the problem we've got is that on the 8th of September 1940, second day of the Blitz, the Army Record Office was hit by a bomb. And that destroyed about 60% of the service papers.
Wow.
So there is this moment when you genuinely come up and you hit the glass wall where you can't go any further because you don't have that one number, that 6th, 1st and 7th, 12th Battalion. You just don't have it, and then you're lost because Northumberland Fusiliers had over 60 battalions in the First World War, so you're never going to find someone unless you've got the battalion number. So that's causes a lot of problems. But
and that makes it impossible. So their stories are kind of lost for
forever. So once you reach that point where you can't go past the usual bits of paper you can find, then for them, you're stuck. You're completely stuck, which is such a shame because they too have stories. And I suppose the only thing that you've managed to do is you've managed to prove the point that you can't do anymore.
Yeah.
And when you do reach that point, you have reached it. But be surprised. I never say never, because you can do this for years and years and years, and you can quite happily put your pack away with all these medals and everything in a box. And it could be years later, you will suddenly sit there and you'll suddenly think, oh, that's him. I've got a set of medals to a man. He was the first Cameron Highlanders officer killed in the First World War.
Right.
September 14. And it came with his photograph. Beautiful photograph. Big photo of him in his kilt. Really cool. His name was Johnston, Lieutenant Johnson. And about 6 or 7 years later, someone gave me a book for Christmas, and it was photos of the First World War. And I was flicking through it on Christmas Day, and there's a group in a photo sitting on the floor, and it says underneath it, Cameron Highlanders watching a German aircraft which had been following them all morning. And there's my man sitting in the middle of the photo, staring up at the aeroplane. And then the next page you turn over, and there he is on a horse. And that was the day he was killed. So that was taken the morning of the day he was killed on. Now, that was probably 6 or 8 years after I bought the medals. But so you can never say never with these things, because there's always something else to find. Even if you think there's nothing, there is always a chance you will find a newspaper cutting. You will find something in a book. Yeah, it happens lots of times.
And so some people collect because they want to acquire. Some people collect because they want to complete. There's lots of different motivations. Is your underlying motivation for your own collection uncovering the story or telling the story or bringing meaning to this kind of tangible item?
It didn't start out that way. It started out as I wanted one of everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad bought me a poster, had 95 medals on it from 1793 to 1973. And the idea we had to collect was to collect one of every type of medal ever issued. What happens then is that you become more sophisticated, I suppose, in what it is you want to collect. So you start to have themes.
Yeah.
So the themes might be by regiment, they might be by battle, they might be by ship. And then you become an expert in that particular area of war. So you know everything about the ship, the battle, whatever it was. So that what you tend to find is that people that you talk to who do collect medals, they have these themes that they profess to stick to. I joined the Orders of Medals Research Society nearly, 40 years ago now. And I was terrified of joining this august body, you see, because I thought, well, I'm not really a professional enough person to do this. I just collect a few medals, but I really wanted to join. And you had to get a form which was signed by two people. You had to have a proposer and a sponsor. And it said on there, what do you collect? Now, I'm going to be facetious here, but basically, I used to talk to people and you'd say to them, so what do you collect, sir? And they'd say, well, I collect to the Essex Regiment. Wow. Yes, the 2nd Battalion. A Company, 7 Platoon. I only collect medals to people called Smith, and I only collect medals to people called Smith who won a military medal on a Wednesday afternoon. And I would go, wow. And I was so terrified of this idea of how incredibly complicated these people's lives were, and they could actually go out and find these things, you see. So when this guy said to me, would you like to join? I was terrified. I said, yes. Now, my two granddads, one was in the King's Royal Rifle Corps. I've got his medals. One was in the Rifle Brigade. I got his medals. And my dad was an airman. I got his medals.
Right, okay.
So I thought, well, this is true. I thought, well, if they come around my house and check, I've got 3, see. So I put down Rifle Brigade, King's Royal Rifle Corps, Royal Air Force. I sent it off. Minutes later, really, a week, came back. There I was, number 4129, in, done. Now, I'm the senior judge for the competitions, and I'm on the telly, and people stop me, and now I know a lot more about this game. Now, if you go back to that person who only collects the Essex Regiment, 2nd Battalion, 4 Company, now I'm bold enough to go, wow, how many you got? They go, well, none, because it's impossible. But they had this, it terrified me, truly terrified me. But people do have these incredible themes that they collect to. And that's fascinating, because when you get to talk to these people, they really are, so immersed in this part of the war or whatever it is that they're interested in. It's another fascinating part about it, because I can guarantee you, they will tell you something and it will mean something to one of your medals as well. Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got another link. So it all sort of joins together.
And what usually triggers it, you've mentioned everybody has that little bit of military somewhere in their family. Yeah. You had a couple of grandparents and your father. Is there a common entry point? Is there usually something that acts as a catalyst for a military collection?
Yeah, usually. There is usually something that starts you off. So my dad used to tell me stories about his aeroplane. My nan gave me his medals.
Yeah.
There were stories of Grandad in the First World War. My other granddad was still alive he didn't die till I was 30, so I knew this little chap who'd been in the trenches on the Somme.
Yeah.
But for me, that was more fascinating than some. But you'd be surprised how many people do say to you, I started doing my family tree, and there was this bloke who I've never heard of. And I found out he was killed. And now all of a sudden they're off on this tangent from where they started. And to be fair, there are moments where in some of the other things that I do, I actually end up taking these people to the battlefield because they're that immersed in it. They want to go and see where the trenches were, where he was and stuff like that. So again, that's a very cool thing as well, because you can almost guarantee if you take someone out, even to France and Flanders, and they're a lost relation, there's no one ever been to see him, because back in the 20s, you couldn't afford to go to France. I mean, it's impossible. So you take these people there and they are genuinely the first people to go and see him. And not only that, but their family. And they bring all sorts of weird things with them, pictures and stuff. I run battlefield tours, okay? So I took 50 people on a battlefield tour to Ypres. And we got to the last sort of evening, and this guy said to me, my granddad's buried in this cemetery. Is it anywhere near here? So I said, I can have a look. And it was on down the road, basically, but it was on the way home, definitely. So, well, we'll go there tomorrow. So we go down there. We get 50 people out. I've taught people how to find things in cemeteries, but now we've got a real target. So I walked off, looked in the book, I found him, I knew where he was, and then I let everybody else try and work out how to find him. And all of a sudden we all found him. So everyone congregated round this headstone. There's this guy standing there. I don't know what he was, about 70, 75, something like that. He had his wife with him. I've got 50-odd people standing in this reasonably muddy field with some headstones in a farmyard thing, out the back of a farm, where it was probably the dressing station. And I said, well, we're here to see Charles, or whatever this bloke's name was. And he went, I got this. If you were killed and you got to a hospital, or they found you at some point, they took your stuff off you. Your watch, your ring, your dog tags, your letters, your pen, your pipe. They took it all off. And they put them in a little white canvas bag. They wrote your name and number on it. And they posted it back to records. And eventually they posted it home to the family. So all this stuff would come back, covered in mud, blood, all sorts of things. And he stood there and he went, I got this. And he rummaged in his coat and he pulled out the white bag. And there was his little photo frame with a picture of his wife in it. There was his rosary and his ring. And he lay them on the top of the cross, on the headstone. All 50 people burst into tears. Because that's the first, they were his. They came from this field. When they took them off him that day and posted them back to this guy's nan, this was the first time they'd ever come back. No one had ever been to see him. But we brought back the picture of his nan for him to see. So, so they're the moments that I really cherish, because they're real people, these people. When they didn't come home, the dogs sat by the front door waiting for them forever, and they never come back. And that's the bit that gets me about these things, because they were just ordinary people.
And it's a story that brings that to life.
And that's what I love to be able to do, to bring these people back to life, even if it's only for an hour. But they're with us in that field, and we all know his name was Herbert or whatever it was, and we talk about him as if he's real and he's there and he's not just a headstone.
And that person had carried that white bag for 50, how many years?
100.
100 years.
100 years it had been in their drawer in the family. Yeah. It was amazing. It was very good. But that is genuinely not the first or the last time. There's a lady on the Roadshow called Hilary Kay, and her uncles were German soldiers in the First World War. And she said to me one day, we were filming in the cemetery for the Roadshow, and she said, my uncles are buried out here somewhere, my great uncles. I said, oh wow. And she told me their names. She said, can you find them? I said, yeah, finding Germans is a lot harder. And I found one. His name was Herman. And I found the cemetery near Passchendaele. I had a coach and a bus, maybe 12 of us, 14 of us, something like that. I said, right, well, last day we're going to go and find this for Hilary off the Roadshow. We got there, we took some photos, and then I phoned her. And I did it on a video call. And I said to her, you're not going to guess where we are, but we found him. And there's all these 12 people standing around this little headstone. It's just a little plaque on the floor, right? And she came up with a fantastic line. She said, and we all burst into tears. Again, it all happened. She said, Uncle Herman. It's 100 years almost to the day he was killed. She said, for all that time, the footsteps have walked past, but today they stopped for him. Wow. Got us all. Just a little square on the floor with a name on. Don't know what he looked like, don't know who he was, but you know what? He was a real person. Whether he was German or whatever, it doesn't matter, but he was a person. So you still have to be in awe of what they did. Whether they were on which side, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to the family either.
It doesn't matter to the family or the dog.
Yeah.
He still waited for Herman to come back, and he never did. And in some cases, the other guy, her other uncle, even the Germans came back and said, we have no idea what happened to him. He just disappeared. So, and the Germans don't have memorials with names on like we do. So he literally just disappeared off the face of the earth. Yeah, that's sad.
And for someone without your expertise, so it might, flying across to France, identifying a specific grave in a graveyard is probably a real challenge for somebody that's right at the beginning of their journey of collecting medals. So if somebody's got that, they've been tracking their lineage and they've found that thing, that catalyst that gets them interested in the hobby. Where do they start? How do they start?
So really, medal collecting is not really a terribly expensive hobby. Not really. If you think that chap the other day bought a banana stuck to a piece of wall and it cost him 6 million quid, I know, it's so ridiculous. The most expensive medals you can buy, okay, so they might sound expensive, right? But the most expensive are Victoria Crosses. Okay, so you're looking at, all right, ready, £250,000.
Yeah.
But you try collecting Rembrandts or bananas, you're up in the millions and millions and millions. Now, millions for people, no one, hardly anybody's going to be able to fork out £1 million for something. And let's face it, £250,000 is a huge, huge sum of money. But the other medals underneath that, they go from 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds to, several hundreds. And once the bug bites, then, you are... I was very impressed once in a very august set of medal collectors company, who I all considered to be multi-billionaires at least. And they all started talking about the fact that they bought medals and they did not add anything to eat for the rest of the month because they didn't have any money left. And I thought, it's not just me then. Because it is that sort of, it's a passion.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem, it's a passion. But really what it is it's an affordable passion because you can set it at your level. And there is always something that you can afford with a story that will add to, your collection of whatever it is your theme's going to be. Yeah.
I think the content that we've produced with you a couple of times, there was one around a much larger item, but then at a recent auction, there were medals that were reaching the tens of thousands, and it was actually something rather different that caught your eye and sent us on a little journey, wasn't it?
Yes. So it was a humble little medal, wasn't it, to a policeman?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it, you see. It's just an ordinary medal. But once you start delving into that story, where did it take us? It took us to the streets of Whitechapel, back to 1888, and the very, very infamous Jack the Ripper. And suddenly, all right, no one knows who Jack the Ripper was, but this policeman, this real person, who this medal acts as a time machine for, we now know his name, Francis Simmons. So suddenly, he's a real person again. He's walking those streets with us because that's what he did. And that's the bit that always absolutely just fascinates me. That these, I always say to people, even Fiona on the Roadshow, I always say, these are not medals, they're time machines. We got a medal out in the shop at the moment for sale. He was a Grenadier Guard and he was at Waterloo. Now that's pretty good to start with, okay? But he was shot through the neck. So he's wounded at Waterloo. And I can pretty much walk you to probably about 100 yards of where he was standing when he got shot. And for me, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Because I've walked that bit of field before, but now I've got a name, now I've got a person, now there's a medal, now there's a time machine. And all of a sudden, it's not just the Grenadier Guards were here, but this man, he was here. This happened to him here. Oh, wow. It's an incredible feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It is absolutely thrilling.
And the fascinating thing about, because it was Lindsay we wandered around Whitechapel with, is a huge amount of work went into tracking where he'd been, where he came from, at what point he moved to that division, that location. Yeah. But what it left open to the imagination was why some of those decisions had been made, or how he was feeling at the time. Those meant, so you can track the location, but the imagination can run wild with everything else.
Absolutely. And what did he, when we stood outside that pub, what did he discuss, even though he probably wasn't allowed, as Lindsay said, but what did he discuss with his friends about Jack the Ripper and those girls that, they probably knew them. To be fair, he walked those beats, and in those days, you knew people in the street, so he probably knew them. So, yeah, but one day, we're not going to find out who Jack the Ripper was, I'll give you that. But one day, I bet you, Lindsay comes back and says, do you know what? I found a photo of him, or something. Because it never stops. And she will always have that name in the back of her head. And while she'll be doing something, all of a sudden, she'll think, oh, that's him, that's Francis. And then we'll be off on another tangent, and we'll be off down another route, and we'll be off on another journey to find out something else about this one man. all because we got one medal.
The same as you opening your book on Christmas Day.
Absolutely.
Building a collection takes a lifetime of passion and dedication. When the time comes to pass it on, whether it's your personal collection or one you've inherited, how can you ensure it finds someone who will treasure it as much as you do? And how can you be certain it achieves its full value? For almost 2 centuries, Stanley Gibbons and Baldwins have been trusted by collectors worldwide to auction their items, including stamps, coins, medals, and trading cards. With free valuations, live auctions in central London, and world-renowned expertise, SGB makes the process seamless and rewarding. Their stunning catalogues and global audience ensure that your collection is always beautifully showcased to passionate bidders hunting for your items. Start your auction journey today by submitting a free valuation request at sgbaldwins.com. And you mentioned finding something with a name makes it that little bit easier to learn something about it. So if somebody's starting collecting, they've got their first piece, which might be from inside the family, or it might have caught their eye at an antiques fair.
Yeah.
If they're going to buy their second, their third, their fourth, what sort of things should they be looking for?
So provenance, you have to find provenance. So with First World War medals, and indeed nearly all Victorian period medals, they've got the man or woman's name on them, impressed on, written on the medal. There it is, done. For World War II, they're not named. So especially for World War II, we are very much reliant on what comes with it. So never think to yourself, well, there's a couple of bits over there of paperwork, but I just want to buy the medals. Because actually what you want to do is you just want to buy the paperwork,
right? And
then maybe the medals, will come with it, if you see what I mean. Because for the ones that aren't named, the only thing left is the cardboard box. The only thing left is the letter. The only thing left is the discharge book, the flying logbook, whatever it might be. But that is the bit you want.
And so the sad thing there is if you decide to buy the medal and not the paper, it prevents anybody else from tracing back and finding out what the story is.
I stood in an antique market in Islington about 1987-ish, and the guy I was standing next to was waiting, like I was, to talk to the bloke who I was going to buy some medals from. And while I was standing next to him, he took out of his pocket a box. He undid the box and he took out a Crimea medal. And he put the box back in his pocket and then said to the guy, do you want to buy the medal? And I said to him, what about the box? He went, it's a box. And the guy said, you got the box? He went, yeah, I got the box. And as he took the box out, these photos came out. And they were of the man wearing the medal. And that was the box, the medal. And he went, what do you want the box for? And you buy medals. And he said, no, it's all part of it. He said, oh. So he said, have you done this before? What would you have done with the box? He said, oh, the box I'd have thrown in the bin and the photos I'd have sold to the photo bloke. That's disaster.
Yeah.
Because what you've spent all your time doing for the next 25 years trying to find a photo of this bloke when it was all there in the first place. So the stuff that comes with it, I always say to people who come here and they're going to talk to me or try and sell me some medals and stuff like that, I say to them, okay, the medals are lovely. What else have you got? And they go, oh, I said, got any photos of him? Oh, yeah, I've got photos. Oh, cool. Got any paperwork? Oh, yeah, I've got a lot of letters from him from Africa. Oh, wow, that's cool, yeah. And my line that I've learned is, you bring me everything and I'll throw it away, not you, because you're going to miss the one piece of paper I want. I had a lady years ago came in and she had something called a Proteus palm. It's South African. I may even have got the name wrong. They're so rare, I can't remember. Protea leaf. But she had the certificate. And I said, have you got this little thing? And I showed her a picture of it and she went, oh, he used to have it on his coat. Wow, I've still got the coat. No, I gave the coat away to a charity shop with the thing still on it. He went, yeah, it was just a thing. All right, maybe that one's a bit extreme, but that's how these things get lost and separated, because the thing on its own is rare, the certificate is rare. Put the two together, wow, and that's the bit that always terrifies me when I talk to people about this stuff, that they go, oh, yeah, no, I had that, but I'll throw it in the bin. And you think, it's what makes things rare, but there again, you lose the story, and it's the story that we're always after.
And it's probably almost impossible to pick one, but your favourite story of an item that's been put in front of you, like what would that be? You're looking at a few items on the desk there.
I did bring this one to show you.
Yeah.
So these are just a British war and a victory medal. Okay. So these are the First World War. They're known as the pair. 1914, 1920 British War, 1914, 1919 victory medal. They're still in the packet.
Yeah.
With original ribbon. They've never been put on the ribbons ever.
Is that commonplace?
No. Well, you'll find out in a second. And they're still in their white cardboard boxes. Okay. Now, the cardboard boxes themselves, they came in a white envelope. We've lost the envelope, but they came with a slip of paper. Still got the paper, and it says, I'm directed to transmit to you the accompanying British War and Victory Medal, which would have been conferred upon the late number 33711 Private H.H. Williams, Royal Berkshire Regiment, had he lived, in memory of his services with the British forces during the Great War. That's why they've never been opened, because they mean something to the lady who got these, which is heartbreaking. Okay, so everyone wears identity discs, known as dog tags. There's a red one and a green one. The green one's got 2 holes in it, slightly different shape, and that goes round your neck, and then this one is tied on the string. And when you get killed, they cut the red one off, and that goes back to records. Mm-hmm. It was in the Berkshire Regiment, and they sent back his cap badge. But this is his diary. When you open the diary, look, or pencil handwritten, and it's his entire story of what happened to him in France. And on the, it says here, southwest of Arras, 2nd of May 17, entered the trenches. He was killed on the 12th, 10 days later. And here we have the photos of, there's Humphrey, and this is Bessie, and this little person is Dolly.
Yeah.
Okay? And there is Dolly. And there is Humphrey in civilians with Bessie and Dorothy. And on the back of one, it says, to our darling Dada, from Mummy and Baby. And that's the bullet hole that killed him.
Oh, wow.
Through his photos. Breast pocket. Clipped his diary on the way through. And when they found him, they took him out of his pocket and they sent them home to Dorothy as returned effects. Now you know why she never took the medals out of the packet. Because you can't, can you? Because you want Humphrey. You don't want them. You don't want to even see them. They're dreadful. And that's the thing about these things. They mean so many different things to different people. Little Dottie there, she grew up, she never knew her dad. All she had was 2 medals and a book and a picture of her with a hole in it. That's why this hobby is incredible. Utterly incredible.
And who brought those in?
They were brought in by a collector. I've known these medals for about 30 years because I was with him one day when he bought them, and he's selling up stuff at the moment. But
how do you think? And you've obviously got a personal context for this with family that have served, and you've been involved in this hobby for decades.
5 years.
How do you think those that the medals were awarded to would feel about them being traded, sold, changing hands?
When you come home from the First or the Second World War, you come back maybe wounded, shell-shocked, PTSD, whatever you want to call it. You've seen people be killed. Maybe seen your friend be killed. Maybe you ran away. You've got to live with that as well. So you have a lot of emotions about what you have just been through. All sorts of things. When you walk through that door and there's your good lady wife standing there, you're not the same person. You're different. You might be horrible. You might be broken. Might be disabled. Might be mad. Might be really grumpy. Might be very far away all the time. But you're different. Then these medals turn up. They're just bits of metal. That's all they are. Now, if I've just spent 3 years in the trenches, Battle of the Somme, Passchendaele, Kaiserschlacht, Advance to Victory, every time I look at them, I can smell the trenches. I can see that dead bloke. I know how terrified I was that day when the shells were landing for 14 hours. And that's what they mean. When the good lady wife sees them, they represent the fact that that's not the same person who came back. So I still love him, but he's not the same. So what happens to these is they get put in the sock drawer. That's where they live, at the back of the drawer. And when children come along, they don't know you got any medals. Oh, they always say to me, oh, he never spoke about it. Oh, he never said a word. Nothing. No. Used to watch the old war film and go, oh, wasn't like that, but never said a word. So when they die, dad and mum, children find these things and they don't mean anything. They are literally bits of metal and ribbons. So they sell them. Means nothing. Very occasionally they stick them back in the drawer or just keep on. Oh, they were dad's. I'll hold on. Now, when you have so many school children that go out to the trenches and learn about World War I and World War II, and they go to the Imperial War Museum, what happens now is that when they get that project that they're going to, whatever bit of battlefield they go to, Ypres or the Somme or wherever, suddenly, oh, we better get on and see who was in the army in the war. See if did we have a granddad? Yes. Oh God, we did. Oh, where's his medals? Ah, now we've got a hero in the family, haven't we? So now what we want to do is we now want to get these out the sock drawer and we want to get them mounted up and we want to wear them because it's our granddad. Or the other thing that you now want to do is you now want to write to me. The answer to this question is medal news, medal tracker. Okay, so maybe just for once I won't get 8 million emails. But the answer to this is that people want them back because now they've worked out that granddad, great-granddad, whatever, he was in the war. And this is the tangible thing that says he was in those trenches or he was in that Spitfire or whatever it was. So now we want them back. So medals have this life of their own. They are not just metal things. They are memories. They are emotive. They are sad. They are unbelievable.
And so is it perhaps that by trading hands, whether it's inherited or sold at auction or privately, that story is, you kind of breathe new life into it. It's an extra person that knows the story behind it, so the meaning behind the medal continues.
Exactly that. Once you get medals, so medals should be with the man, the woman. Medals should be with the family. That's where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Most museums turn these things down because they got lots of them and they don't want any more. And even if they took them, they just put them in a drawer and they would never find out what happened to Herbert. They would just be medals in a drawer. But the one thing that you can always say is, people say to me, will the medals go to a good home? And I say, I can guarantee you, whoever buys these, they're buying them because they love them. And they want to know about Herbert and Dolly and Bessie. They want to know about these people and they will bring them back to life again and they will cherish them in their collections. So that maybe is the third chapter of what happens to medals. Eventually, they are looked after by someone who tries to find out genuinely what happened to this person. Bless him, Herbert. He must have been found because they took these out of his pocket. But by the time the war finished, his grave's gone. So now he's just a name on a wall at Arras. That's all he is. And he is literally just H.H. Williams. That's it. No one would ever know his name was Herbert and Henry. No one. But I do. And I will go and see him one day. That's why I do it.
And if that's one of your favourite stories so far, is there a story which you'd love to get hold of the item behind?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so as we said, you have themes.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing this for so long. I think about 55 years now. That a lot of the things that I set out to get, I have got.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that people say to you, "Ooh, what's the medal you're looking for now? Which is the one?" And I go, "Well, it doesn't work like that anymore." Now what happens is that I read a book or I watch a documentary or this turns up, something like this. And that's the bit that piques my interest. So if it's a documentary, and let's say it's about Malta, okay? And the resupply of the island of Malta.
Yeah.
It was a thing called Operation Pedestal. So you get into the book, you learn all about it because it's interesting, and you read about it on the train and wherever it is you're going. And then all of a sudden you think, well, I've got to get some medals to someone who was on pedestal. And then you spend a lot of time trying to find someone who was there. So the one thing at the moment that has completely eluded me, during World War II, the Royal Air Force had 4 unofficial clubs. The Caterpillar, the Goldfish, the Late Arrivals Club, and the Guinea Pig Club. So the Caterpillar is a little badge, about inch long, maybe not even an inch, 3/4 of an inch, made of gold, 2 ruby eyes, name on the back. And these were given to people by the Irving Parachute Company who had their life saved from a stricken aircraft by a parachute. Parachutes are silk, the Caterpillar Club. Got a little card. The Goldfish Club. These were people whose lives had been saved by dinghy. And the cards are laminated. And it says on the back, "We have made it waterproof in case you do it again." It's quite cool. Because it's a dark sense of humour, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, you just crashed in a bomber in the North Sea, so it's not the best day out, but they give you a badge and a thing. And then there's the Late Arrivals Club, which is a little tiny metal, cut out of a tin can almost, boot, flying boot with wings. And this was given to those men in the Air Force who were shot down in North Africa behind German lines, and then they walked home through the desert. The Late Arrivals Club. I've got those 3 in my collection. The Late Arrivals Club is quite hard to find, but the other 2 are there are a lot of them. But
is that because so few survived the march back through the desert?
Yeah. Not many people got to be in the club. But the one that has always eluded me is the Guinea Pig Club. So it is a guinea. It looks like a guinea pig, but it's got wings. It's about 1.5 inches long. And this was a club started by a man called Sir Archibald Mackindoe. And he was an experimental plastic surgeon. And what he did was he looked after burned airmen. And they were his guinea pigs. And they started a club. I think there's 624 members. They said it was the hardest club in the world to be a member of. And they got a badge, and they got a little card, and they had a magazine. And they've all gone now. There are no guinea pigs left in the world. They've all died. But these men were the people who wandered through life burned. I've always lived in Walthamstow, and in Walthamstow in the high street there used to be Marks and Spencer's. You remember Are You Being Served?
Yep.
Captain Peacock. Well, they had one of those, a floor walker, in morning dress.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not that old, but truly, he had morning dress on, and he walked the floor in Marks and Spencer's and would say to you, "Good morning, sir. Good morning, madam," and that stuff. And he was so burned. He was so burned. He didn't have a face, really. He must have been a guinea pig. He had to be a guinea pig. He was exactly the same age as my dad, a guinea pig. So when I was a kid, these people were around, First World War soldiers were around. There are loads of them, I think when I was born, there were still Boer War soldiers alive.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a world that I lived in where, it was sterile and nothing, There were these people walking around, And for me at the moment, I always say on the Roadshow, I filmed the other three. I've never filmed a guinea pig. I would love to film a guinea pig. But then also in my personal collection, I would love to own a guinea pig just to have that story.
Yeah.
Of another dreadful day for someone. But wow, what a story.
And is there a particular guinea pig that you'd like to handle?
No. Well, there was a guy called Tom Gleave. He was shot down in the Battle of Britain. He was quite famous. I mean, that would be like owning Guy Gibson's, He's that famous. I mean, not everybody knows the name of Tom Gleave, but if you're in the world of Battle of Britons and Spitfires and stuff, you know Tom Gleave.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily set out and think to yourself, I want that medal to that man. What you want is the medals to come to you and you find the story. And then that man becomes special. Not just because he was, known at the time, but because he was just there. He really was just a wireless operator in a Wellington when the wheels collapsed and the thing caught fire and he got burned. That's the story. But wow, what a story, And to find that out once more, very cool.
And what is it about that particular item that's narrowed down? Is it the rarity? Is it what is it that appeals so much?
Well, there is that little bit of me that is a collector. So I have to have the set.
Yeah.
I know I always say it's about the story, but there is also that bit about, I want the set.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's very easy to buy medals for all sorts of things. I mean, this is an incredible group, but you could buy that. You maybe not see another one quite like it ever again, but it is very cool. But there is also that thing that the guinea pig badge has eluded me for so long that it is now ingrained in me that I want one of these things.
It's your white whale.
It's my white whale. But then I also have a feeling I don't actually want one because I don't want the chase to finish.
Yeah.
Because I have lived the chase now probably for 44 years since I found out about these things. It was the 40th anniversary of the Battle of Britain was when I started to work out what these things were. So we're talking 44 years ago. So I've been looking for, and if someone went, there you go, it would be like, wow,
what's next?
Yeah, exactly. What's next? Now, there will always be something.
Yeah.
But that has been the thing for so long. And I've only ever come across one. I went to an American, in Norfolk and Suffolk, American air bases, and they have museums, 355th Bombardment Group, stuff like that. And I know this guy called Chris, and he said to me, he volunteers there, and he said, would you come up and we'll put you on the Facebook page and, stuff like that. I said, yeah, of course I will. So I went to see them. And wow, what a museum. Really. Stuff in there was incredible. And it was pretty much all owned by one bloke. It was near Bungay in Suffolk. They'd laid out on this table all these new things. And right in the middle was an air gunner's logbook with a guinea pig badge on it. And a guinea pig club card. And a photo album of him before, burned, after. And his guinea pig club magazine. And I went, oh, And my friend Chris went, yeah, that's the thing you're after, isn't it? I went, yes. Where did you get it from? And he said, not my friend Chris, the guy. He said, in the village we have like an auction, you know, on Wednesday mornings. They sell lawnmower parts and stuff like that. And it was in a box. And I said, oh, how long ago did you get it? He went, about 2 weeks. What would you pay for it? He went, £10. So I'll give you £1,000 for it right now. He went, no, I quite like it. Oh, it's really been really nice to come here. I'm never going to tell anybody ever again where it is. All right, bye. But that's part of what medal collecting is about. It is about that chance. That might happen. That genuinely might happen. It did. It happened to that man.
Yeah.
And then as a medal collector and someone who has been fascinated with this stuff all the time, and you know all these different people, we thrive on these stories of, you know, oh, do you remember when we all saw that and it was only 20 quid? And yeah, that's a part of it. That's what you do when you're having a cup of tea with all your mates talking about this stuff, because this never stops for us. You know, I belong to clubs, the Ordnance of Medals Research Society, all these sorts of things. And we go off and we talk to each other and we do meetings and we have WhatsApp groups and all sorts of things. And it's a whole, and not just for me, really, not just for me, for people who suddenly get bitten by this, this becomes so fascinating and so interesting and so all-consuming that there's not just me out there that does this. There are lots of people who do this, and they do it to the nth degree, and they've all got those fantastic stories, and everybody tries to outdo everybody else because, you know, that's what you're doing, really. But at the end of the day, everybody's just so impressed with what everybody else has got and what they've seen, because they're all nice people. They wouldn't be nice people who did this if they didn't get it, and they do. So they all tend to be nice people because they also cherish these people's memories, and that's a really big thing about this.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers.